Dr. Ashok Bedi. Thanks for joining us today.
You're most welcome, Daniel. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, glad to have you with me. I think you just got back from, well, India and then also Ireland. Is that correct?
Yes, I do a lot of volunteer work in India for last 20, 25 years. And it's wonderful to go back and be part of their emergence on the global scene in terms of not business or finance, but in terms of spiritual sort of reclamation of their solid ground in world affairs. And Indians have something to say about what is going on from a spiritual perspective.
Yeah. I think even from reading a little bit of Jung that I have, he talked about when the Western world kind of came upon and first had access to the translations of like the Vedic texts and the different Indian philosophical and religious texts. And even in the grand scheme of things, especially for the Western world, it's still very young for us to have access to this and to think in more of an Eastern way.
Yes.
And all of the spirituality that from as I think like the Indian culture is one of the spans back one of the furthest, like one of the oldest cultures, and the Vedic texts, I think they were written like 4,000 BC or something. Do you know?
Yes, it's the oldest living civilization, and the beauty is that it is still following the same Vedic canons, and the old culture and the old um, texts are still the guiding sort of light for an average Indian, an average Hindu. So, absolutely, yes.
And kind of I asked you to come here today because I've been introduced to a little bit of those writings and been reading through like the Upanishads myself a little.
Yes.
And I learned about Diwali, and I think Jung was very interested in Eastern traditions and kind of bridging that thought. And I read that when Jung not really came up with, but what Jung calls the self, and a lot of that, he was reading the Upanishads at the time he was kind of developing his analysis. So, yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you today to talk about this is your specialization. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, Jung had been deeply influenced by Eastern thought. He had one of the largest collections of Eastern wisdom texts, including Max Mueller and a lot of other people, Upanishads, in his personal library. And I may be in Zurich in a few months for our World Conference on Jung, and been to his library and such. And one of the largest collections of Eastern books, even more than an average Hindu scholar. So it's quite surprising. And he was deeply inspired by Hindu thought and did a creative and very original integration of the Eastern ideas and a sort of a clinical and Western paradigm. So it's a very creative, alchemic sort of mix of two ideas. And he came up with his own unique synthesis in a way that becomes clinically relevant. It is news we can use to help a patient. We can use to guide someone's individuation process. We can use to look at the challenges of the human condition, both individually and collectively, like we are seeing right now in our global order. There is a chaos. And if we, it's very disheartening from the surface. But if we look at it from a Eastern perspective, these are predictable eternal cycles of creation and destruction, order and chaos. And while it is disheartening, but this is a necessary evolution of human consciousness. For example, once we have an old order, an established order of society, of or individual psyche, it does not have to be society, it can be your life or my life. We are living out of a certain personal myth, for example. And that myth does very well. For example, when you are much younger than I am, when your myth, personal myth, may be one of a warrior, an entrepreneur, something or to establish yourself in the world and in your own chosen field of enterprise, and to do good for your family, your community, and for humanity. So that is the guiding principle. But your portal to engage your consciousness would be one guided by the warrior archetype. In Kundalini, we call it the Manipura chakra, the third chakra, the fire chakra, essential at this stage of life. But a point comes when that does not work anymore, because you've been there, done it, you've climbed your mountains, you've claimed your hill. Now what? After you're king of your hill, after I'm the king of my hill, then that loses its allure and something else calls us. And to stay stuck in the warrior archetype, warrior myth, becomes redundant, it becomes chaotic, it becomes disruptive to our life, our relationships. Because when I go someplace, people are not looking for a warrior. They're looking for a guide. They're looking for a wise old man who can give them some guidance. They're not looking for a fight. They're looking for, they are reverent. They are looking for some soul guidance. So if I continue to go into that as a warrior, it will be chaotic. You say, well, that doesn't make sense. So the necessary and so that breaks down at some point. Now, if we are wise, we make what I would call a proactive transition. But most of us are not conscious of this transitional process. So we stay stuck in the old paradigm, and that becomes chaotic. So staying stuck in the old order, old personal myth, the old archetype, say warrior in this case, becomes redundant. And then the psyche then creates chaos, because it is going to have an impact on your life, a necessary chaos, because the paradigm you're using is destructive to you, others, and the world around you. So then the psyche gives us a new symbol, creates a new personal myth. It leads us to it, whether it is through synchronistic events or relationships or dreams or symptoms, body symptoms, psychological symptoms, relationship problems. Some piece of artwork inspires you. So something happens in the unconscious, both for individuals in the personal unconscious and for societies in their collective unconscious, to give us a new personal myth, one of a lover, because the natural transition from a warrior would be the lover archetype, the anahata chakra, the heart chakra. If you now are a warrior, you've had your victories. Now you want to have the sanctuary of a soulful relationship, with someone, and that transition becomes the new order. A new order is created from warrior to lover. So that is the eternal cycle. Old order becomes dysfunctional, becomes chaotic, and out of the chaos is created a new symbol, a divine child, a new guidance, a new personal myth that guides you on to the next stage of your personal and collective development. I think our society is right now in one such transition from a warrior archetype to a lover archetype, to an archetype of relatedness. We're not there yet, but I think that is in the West particularly, that is the transition which is essential. So I think that would be the eternal cycle, and there is time and again. I don't keep going on. I can keep, but do in what you wish. But I would say that is the core. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, for example, the biggest, longest epic in the world, largest epic is Mahabharata, the Great War of India, in which, of course, Krishna is the central figure. Now, and as you know, Krishna is considered to be one of the reincarnations, avatars of Lord Vishnu. And in Bhagavad Gita, which is essentially, I've got 20 different translations, but this is still my favorite, Abraham Miller. And what happens is, whenever the old order becomes dysfunctional, then the Vishnu reincarnates. He kind of comes as a destroyer of the old order and the provocateur of the new order. And those are the 10 avatars or reincarnations of Vishnu. So my most favorite quote from Bhagavad Gita is from chapter 11, verse 7 and 8. And I'll read that for you and then kind of give you a little bit of my amplification from a Hindu and Jungian and clinical perspective. It says, whenever sacred duty decays, meaning the old order is dysfunctional, and chaos prevails, the life goes out of sync, then I, meaning Vishnu, create in this Avtara as Krishna. Then I create myself, Arjuna, that is his protege, his student. Then I create myself, Arjuna, to protect men of virtue, meaning not men, this is gender neutral supposedly, but in those days, and destroy men who do evil, to set the standard of sacred duty, meaning establish a new order, I appear in age after age. Now, this 8 lines, chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, verse 7 and 8, are the central theme. If you understand this, you understand all of Yoga. So, and all of the destructive and creative process. So, whenever sacred duty decays, that means the old order is dysfunctional. In one's case, the warrior archetype is out of sync now with where you are and where I am. So the whole that is sustained by the complexes and so forth, but you're stuck in that paradigm. And then at that point, it becomes chaotic, because if you are in a relationship and you're taking on a warrior attitude, it's not going to work. You have to yield, you have to be mutual, you have to go with your heart and not with your power. So it's a movement from power dynamic to relational dynamic of arrows, not thanatos of the war. Then this I is the self. This I is the soul. That part of us, the deepest part of our personality, the soul, then is activated. He says, now let me reboot your personality. So then I create myself. That is the act of creation. A new symbol is created. And a new symbol can come from a dream. It can come from your complexes, your old hang-ups, which are pure gold. If you understand them and digest them and assimilate them, they may come from a relationship which challenges your old attitude and fosters, invites you, beckons you to create a new paradigm for your life, and so forth. Or it may be a medical symptom that, it is saying, well, this, how you have heart palpitation. That means your heart is saying, pay attention to me, come join me. If you don't, then of course you get a heart attack. But if you listen, then you have a nice new paradigm. So choice is ours at each of these points, whether we ignore the symbols of the unconscious, of the soul, or we pay attention to our emerging new paradigm, new myth, new pacemaker of our consciousness. That's what a new paradigm is. And this new consciousness, new paradigm, is there to protect the man of virtue, meaning re-establish the integrity of an individual, a personality, make them more authentic, more ethical, more relevant to their life stage. And the same thing happens for the collective, for the society, for a culture. And destroy the men who do evil. That means the old consciousness, the old paradigm is destroyed. So that destruction is essential. And I think it's not to be taken lightly. Now, I appear to set the standard of sacred duty, meaning establish a new myth, a new paradigm. I appear in age after age, meaning at each of our life stage, developmental stage, this new paradigm, this process is repeated both in individuals and in collectives. And one can look at it in the whole story of Mahabharata. Incidentally, Bhagavad Gita is just a footnote of 700 verses, just footnote in chapter 6 of 18 chapters, number 6, the Bhishma Purana, the Bhishma Parvan, meaning book of Bhishma, is number 6 book. And this is just a footnote. So just imagine the most relevant message of the whole of Hindu canon is in this little footnote. So if you understand it, so yeah. So there we have that process, and I would say the destructive in Mahabharata, of course, the problem why Krishna had to come in Mahabharata is that during before his birth, all of India was super armed, like we are in the world right now. Everyone was a nuclear power. All these kingdoms, they were armed to the teeth. It was a warrior culture. Everyone, their resolution was let's have a war rather than, let's talk. So that was the culture. And there was no way to negotiate because everyone was super armed. They had very sophisticated weapons. Some people say they even had nuclear weapons in those days. But that's all for history, people to sort out, and the scientist. And there was no way to establish a new paradigm of lover. Then arrives Krishna. Now, Krishna is a very interesting figure, of course. He's the embodiment of the divine trickster and Hermes in our Western canon. And he was both a negotiator and a lover, but also a warrior because he was the power behind the World War of India, Mahabharat, meaning the Great War of India, and or the World War of India, let's call it. And the goal was to move from the warrior culture to the lover culture, the negotiative culture, the relatedness culture. And in this whole deal, he manufactured, he staged, he created a war so that all these warriors and armies destroy each other. He did not want any armies. He wanted to denuclearize the planet. He wanted to establish a new order. The only way to do it is to destroy all warriors. And that's what Mahabharata is about, great destruction. But only destruction of the warrior archetype, the warrior class, so that more civilian, more civilized way of governing and relating can take place. The archetype, the one of the later avatars of Vishnu was Buddha, the one of peace, just detachment, compassion. So it's interesting, and and there in one of the chapters, actually chapter 11, paragraph 32, is the famous quote from Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. This is the quote, of course, of that we had in Oppenheimer, who, when he created a nuclear bomb and he saw the destructive power he had unleashed, he remembered Krishna's quote, I am become destroyer of the world. I'm become death. And I think that is also God. That is also divine. So I think that is where we are. So I'll certainly pause for any questions and so forth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had quite a few. Thank you for that. I had quite a few thoughts. My
Mhm.
first is just kind of ground level. I've been reading some of Freud, and he
Yeah,
talks about um, a lot of times in childhood, under a certain context, we learn a certain way of defending against these negative affect. So we
mm,
learn a defense and we apply it kind of rigidly as we grow.
sure,
And then when we're in a different context, we're still reliant upon that same defense. And a lot of therapy can be helping us be more flexible with the defenses at our disposal.
right.
So that kind of, again, that's that same theme of the
Mhm.
destruction and creation.
Yeah,
And you're applying it to also just to like archetypes, which is very fascinating. I I get, for some reason I was thinking Lord of the Rings, probably is very archetypal. So you've got
yeah.
like Aragorn, who's the warrior, and then maybe Gandalf, who's the wise old man slash, uh,
Mhm.
yeah. But the hope would be that when Aragorn grows older, he also he doesn't stay the warrior, you know. um, and you said that it seems that in the West, or I don't know if it was the West or America specifically, but you said that it seems that we're approaching a transitionary period from warrior to lover.
Yeah,
Is that what it was? Yeah, can
archetype of
you
lover. Relatedness, let's call it, yeah.
what is it that you see that gives you that impression?
Well, I think after we have destroyed each other in our arsenals, and we find the limits of the and the outer thresholds of the warrior possibilities, You can only kill so many soldiers. You can only bomb so many towns. You can only destroy so much by nuclear bombs. Of course, we can destroy the whole planet, in which case we will be dinosaurs. And, in the cosmic picture, we are an anthill. It wouldn't make any difference to the cosmos if we destroy each other. But even after that destruction, a new race will emerge, a new, kind of gene. Instead of Homo sapiens, we will have some other, species emerge out of ashes of, our race. So it does not make any big difference to the universe whether we destroy each other or not. But hopefully, we will not do that. So let's say we have figured out that war can only take us so far. Then we'll have to talk. Then we'll have to sit down at a negotiating table. Then we'll have to figure out a new paradigm. And that will be one of relatedness, of mutuality, of a what I would call a win-win situation, because the paradigm of war is win-lose. I win, you lose, or you win, I lose. But that always sows the seed for next destructive cycle, because no consciousness, no human being, no race, no country, no culture can be colonized or suppressed forever. Soul will speak. It will find a way to express its own emergence. And at that point, uh, we'll have to sit down and talk. And the only logical and viable outcome of conflict is a resolution which has a semblance of a win-win situation, where the core interests of both protagonists are honored. And I think that's the only way it can work. And we've tried that time and again, isn't it? In every world war or any war you look at, that is always the attempt, how to create a win-win situation. Otherwise, it always unfortunately, what we end up doing is the worst combination, lose-lose situation, when we think we are winning. So moving from lose-lose to I win, you lose, or you win, I lose, to a win-win. That's the highest, and that is only possible under the auspices of the archetype of mutuality, relatedness, and that's always mediated by the Hermes, the divine trickster, the Krishna, who brings the two parties together to say, well, you need to talk this over and work it out in ways that both sides are honored. So, and that's go ahead, please. Yeah.
I think Jung wrote about how we're now equipped with nuclear weapons,
Mhm.
but psychologically we're not as developed as we are like nuclearly, I
Our
don't know the word.
consciousness is not gone nuclear or quantum. It is still
Yeah.
very
Do
primitive.
you do you think after we've used them, like you mentioned Oppenheimer earlier, do you
Mhm.
think that we're psychologically developing to a point where we can be more mature to be that relational?
Well, I think we will do it not by choice, but by necessity. That's the
Okay.
human problem. That
Mm.
we some of the most significant transformation and changes in human consciousness or collective consciousness or national or cultural consciousness do not happen by choice. They
Mm.
happen by necessity, because our very emotional survival depends upon it. And I think, for example, both as a Jungian analyst, as a Hindu, and as a psychiatrist, practicing psychiatrist, I've found that when we don't heed the whispers of the soul, when we don't listen to synchronicities, when we don't honor the symbols of the unconscious through our dreams or art or culture or something that calls us, then the last resort is that our body speaks. So if you don't pay attention to your heart chakra, anahata chakra, eventually you'll get a heart attack. You'll die. So, so the body is the last messenger. That's the red code. But that will happen, and often, or of course, the mild people, those who are spiritually evolved, psychologically have symbolic function, they have mentalization capacity, they have ego strength. They are able to read or get guidance from these symbols. But unfortunately, most people are not so primed as such to listen to or understand the wisdom and the symbols of the unconscious. And for them, the next level, of course, is their complexes or hang-ups. They become sort of the portals through which deeper wisdom can come to us. Uh, Complexes are your hang-ups and so forth. I could talk about that first.
Yeah.
If you don't listen to that, then your relationships become relationship turbulence becomes your next sort of call. If you still don't listen to it, then of course you have medical and psychiatric symptoms. And they become the last call. If you still don't listen to that, then you get cancer or your relationship breaks down, you got a heart attack, you die,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you become psychotic.
Could you talk about, so you're talking about the warrior archetype transitioning to more of the lover archetype, more relatedness centered focused. Can you talk about how we might handle our psychological symptoms, psychiatric symptoms,
Yep.
how people handle that in a warrior archetype, and how we could approach those symptoms more from the relational archetype?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think the whole idea is when you have a conflict, let's say in a marriage, in a relationship, then the tendency is for the men in relationship, at least the old-fashioned men, is to use the power principle. My way or the highway. I'm the one who brings in the bacon, or bring the bread. Put food on the table. I'm the king of this hill. Now, that does not always work, of course, because that's not necessarily even the case. Women make just as much money and are quite successful in their life and work. So that breaks down. I'll give you a clinical example in a minute to make this point, and then, of course, you have to come to the negotiating table. So this was I wrote about this case in one of my books, so it's public knowledge with client's permission. It's a very modified case, so no one would recognize it. So this woman came to me for what actually was referred by her husband, who was a surgeon, let's call it, and he knew me from my work at the hospital and other places. He said, "Well, my wife is a little bit depressed. Can you see her for a few sessions and fix her?" I said, "Okay, I'll try to fix her." So this she was, let's say, 50-year old. I'm just making up a number. She came to me, a very soulful woman. She had children were launched. They were doing their thing now. It was an empty nest, and she'd gone back to school and became a therapist herself. But she was not allowed to practice because her husband wanted her to stay home and take care of, because they had enough money. So why do you want to work? You got more money than you can spend in 2 lifetimes. But she said, I want to work because, I want to work. I want to celebrate, my passion for work. Didn't happen. So she said, okay, she maintained her peace. She yielded for a while. And then she got depressed suddenly. And she came to me well, she didn't come to me. The husband sent her to me for fixing her up. So I said, well, when you were doing well, I understand your children left for home and they're doing great now, and you have this new training. So could you not negotiate with your husband to kind of work it out and kind of work? He said, well, I tried, but I'm okay with not working. So I said, well, if you're okay and you're doing volunteer work and this and that, why are you depressed? He said, well, I don't know. There's no reason for depression. She was not clinically depressed as such that she needed medication. It was just something else cooking. So I said, well, okay, let's find out more. And then after a few sessions, I said, well, when did it all start? And then she was able to pinpoint when it all started. She said, started on a Saturday afternoon, my sudden depression. And I said, what happened? Well, he said, um, my sister-in-law called me to say that my husband's mother had died in some place, and he was at a golf game. So he said, well, thank you for letting me know. Let me finish my game. I'll come home and then we'll take care of it. So he came home after his game, and his a few drinks, and then very systematically and very methodically consulted his siblings and arranged for the funeral and this and that, but did not have any big feelings and very surgical about his management of this event. And then after that, he continued, after the funeral was over, memorial service was done, he continued his life, actually got more busy with his work because he was quite a successful fellow. And she got more and more depressed. And I thought that is strange that after your mother-in-law's death, you are more depressed, and this guy is, doing much more successful work. Usually, you get more relaxed after your death of your mother-in-law. So it was kind of paradoxical. So I noticed it, and then we kind of worked on it, and she became more embodied and more empowered in terms of finding her voice and so forth. And I encouraged her to, start working because she wanted to, and she started to work. And by the end of the year, after she first met me, she was working in a group practice of therapists and was actually doing very well. Husband was not happy, but couldn't do much about it because she was now in a therapy and it had some kind of support. Interestingly, after that, he got depressed, and he started to get into trouble. So wife said, "Well, he's a little depressed now. Can I help him?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll refer him to one of my colleagues for some supportive work." So he saw someone for 5-6 sessions and then dismissed it like, "I'm fine." I was on a session. No big deal. Play extra golf game and have a extra single malt scotch. It'll all fix it. So he continued his merry old ways, and then at the end of second year, she continued therapy, continued to grow. He had a mild heart attack, and I tried to call him in to see what's going on. He said, just a minor heart attack. Put a stent, he'll be fine. 6 months later, he had a massive heart attack and he died. So I did a psycho. I mean, she's fine. I mean, I still see this fine young lady. What was going on was that he was dealing with his midlife transition as a warrior, as a surgeon, golf game, scotch, go and climb, Colorado mountains, skiing, and it's like a push through it. And when his mother died, he did not grieve it, but his wife grieved it for him. She was carrying his unresolved grief. She became the vessel for his unresolved grief and pain of his mother's death. But when she refused to carry that after therapy, not in terms of negatively, but, well, it's your thing, I do my thing. Yeah. He had to deal with his relationality, his grief, his heart chakra, and he didn't listen to it. So the heart moved up the message to a mild heart attack, still didn't listen to it. Then, of course, he died. So that's an example of you don't move from warrior to archetype of relatedness. Either you move from there. I just wanted to give you a drastic example. There just has been successful examples of individuals who have proactively made that transition. Now, of course, even lover archetype is not lifelong archetype. After lover, becomes the archetype of, the trickster, the one with your authentic voice. That is the next level in Kundalini system. Your root chakra is your mother chakra, your place of you need love, support, attachment, relatedness. Your second chakra is the Muladhara, and after that, Swadhisthana. Second pelvic chakra is one of generativity, creativity, or father energy. Third is the warrior. The fourth heart chakra is the Anahata chakra. The fifth chakra is, of course, your Vishuddha, your throat chakra, the one of finding your own authentic voice. And then, of course, sixth chakra, Ajna, is one of leadership. You claim your leadership. You've been to all those levels of development spiritually. Now you need to. And the seventh, the highest chakra, Sahasrara chakra, is one of being a anchorite, wise old man, the wise old woman, Sophia, or what we call Rishi in India, the mentor, the soul guide, the Philemon in Jung's Red Book. So these are all examples of people who are now world citizens. They are mentors to others. They are soul guides and so forth. So another woman who was very much into her heart chakra came for therapy, and it was not working for her. She was already had two marriages which were broken, and she was a very fine, beautiful, successful professional woman. And I was surprised, why did she lose two relationships? But it was not her fault. This is how things work.
Mm.
So the reason she came for therapy is that she wanted to find out what is she doing wrong to keep losing her marriages and relationships, and how to find the perfect man in her life so that she can be, happy again. I said, fine, that's a reasonable goal. Let's look at, what's going on. And the work continued. And then somewhere down in her therapy and analysis, she had a dream. In this dream, I live in Milwaukee, of course. We have a famous Jesuit college here called Marquette University. So in this dream, she went to Marquette to audit a course on fairy tales. And there were three courses that she wanted to be admitted to. She got admission in two of the three courses, but the third one was sold out. And that was the one she really wanted to do. And she was disappointed. And that was a dream. So I said, well, let's look at that. I said, what is the course that you did not get into? Because that was the one and that was the fairy tale of Velveteen Rabbit. And now, I don't know, you probably know the myth. This was a rabbit which was made of velvet, and it was a little boy's, toy. And when he got sick, they threw that out because he was feverish and they thought it was infected. And the boy came out of his fever and was inconsolable. He wanted his rabbit back. And so they found it from the trash heap and cleaned it and gave it back to him. And at that point, this velveteen rabbit, came back to life. It became a real rabbit. So that was a myth uh, by which she was living in heart chakra. That means her myth, old myth was that the love of a man, of a boy, will bring me back to life.
Mm.
She was the velvet rabbit, which means she was touchable and very cozy, but did not have her own life, her own authority. And the dream was saying, you don't need admission in that class. That myth is not your myth. And she got it. I
Uh,
got it. That forget the man. You've been there, done it. You've got, two lovely children. You're successful professional. You don't need a man. You can have, boy toys here and there, but live your life. And she said, heck with it. It's living her life. So she moved from the heart chakra, anahata, to finding her own voice, her own authority, her own embodiment of her own dreams and ambitions and so forth. So she got a little bit of a warrior also. So she went down to claim her warrior, which she had never claimed. Always deferred it, projected it onto men in her life, and also found her own authentic voice. So she kind of circumambulated from her heart chakra down to warrior and up to her throat chakra, created a new mandala of consciousness, of awareness. The old paradigm of dependence on men as an arbitrator of her self-esteem, of her viability as a woman, was destroyed. And a new order of self empowerment came to life, which reminded me of the old dictum, which is my favorite, of Saint Augustus in his book The Confessions, last chapter. He comes up with this beautiful formula of human consciousness. I'm paraphrasing him, of course, which means the right of men, he says men, but men and women, the rights of men do not come from generosity of others, state or relationship, but from hands of God, meaning the divine, the soul, the higher consciousness. And I think that's the challenge for each one of us. We depend on someone else for self-esteem regulation, for mirroring who we are. But the only clean and pure mirror to our authenticity is the mirror of the divine, God, the higher consciousness, self-reflection, and so forth. So
mm.
that's
Yeah,
an example of moving from warrior to the lover, and even beyond lover to to higher thresholds of consciousness.
yeah, that was great. Thank you. The I'm kind of thinking, so our theme, this destruction and creativity and creation.
Creation, yeah.
Um, I'm thinking, so I remember talking with Dr. Deborah Lupnitz, and she said a
Mm.
colleague of hers came up with this kind of prayer where it's like, I think it's thank you, Eros, for new life, creation, all these. Thank you, Thanatos, for destruction, for doing away with. And I was thinking, we usually think of destruction as a bad thing or in a negative way, and we want to celebrate the good, and we don't associate destruction with good. Um,
Yeah.
and even with the holiday Diwali, I think it's basically the celebration of light over darkness.
Yes.
And um, I guess, would you say, I mean, I understand the tendency to celebrate light over darkness, but darkness can also be a good thing.
Right.
Um, so would you say that the celebration of light over darkness is proper and good, but we also need to balance? Like, we should also celebrate destruction and darkness, or and maybe we should move more toward that end, or yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think in Diwali is you mentioned Diwali, which is a festival of lights in India, and it's a month-long festival. You build it up to the day of Diwali. It's a lunar cycle, so it starts with Dashera, the destruction of the evil of the dark side, and then the goddess Lakshmi or Durga come into power and so forth. So there's a lot of mythology around it, but keeping it very simple. The last day of that month is the new moon. New moon is dark nights, totally dark, and that is the metaphor for the dark night of the soul, for the end of a destructive cycle when old consciousness or old paradigm or the old culture is destroyed, and or the old way of relating, being, doing is destroyed, and in that darkness, what are we to do? So it's not about shadow, it's about darkness. It's end of an eon, end of a epicycle of consciousness, or culturally or individually. So what are we as individuals to do at a time like this? So when the night is the darkest, like we feel like it's in our culture sometimes, right now people say it's very dark, what each one of us can do is to light a small lamp of consciousness. Just a small lamp. That's all we can do because we are small. We are one in 8 billion people and 24 billion species on Earth and so forth. So we are very, very, as individual enterprise has limits to its impact. So at that time, all we must do is to look at our own darkness of our own soul that may be contributing to the collective darkness and light a candle of insight, of new consciousness, of new way of resolving that issue as an individual. And and if each one of us does, that becomes a source of light for the universe, for new light for the universe. I remember one year I was traveling to India in winter, and our plane was landing in Bombay, in Mumbai, and it was a Diwali night, so I was going to meet some friends and family and celebrate it there. So I reached there on Diwali night, so it was very auspicious. And as our plane was landing, I could see the skies because of the dark night. All the stars in the sky were beautiful, like Indira's net, all diamonds, strung in the sky. And I looked down on city of Bombay, and each home had tons of candles lit on Diwali night. And I could not for a while decide whether the sky was below or above
Wow.
because both mirrored each other. There was Indira's net on the ground, but at this point lit by the human beings. And in the sky was the Indira's net, the diamonds in the sky, lit by God, by divine. And when we do light our own small candle of consciousness, when each one of us does it, that becomes creation of a new universe down here, a new paradigm, a new consciousness. And I think the value of a small, power of the small, that is what Mahatma Gandhi said. Don't wait for someone to change the world. You be the change. Be the change that you want. And if each one of us did it rather than wait for someone else to do it, some messiah to do it, some leader to do it, some politician to do it, let us make a change in our consciousness. So it's not a question of the power of light over dark, but a question of claiming your own higher consciousness to be part of the solution rather than to be part of the problem in the collective small world that we have.
I see that. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense. I remember this talk where this gentleman was talking about when we look at the stars and we feel this sense of awe, that he thinks that awe is us wanting to imitate that, like this awesomeness, this vastness, this profundity that we want to, it draws us toward imitation.
Right.
And you talking about looking down from the plane and all of the lights lit and you couldn't decide which was above or below. That
Yeah.
really reminded me of
And
that.
we don't imitate the stars, Daniel. We are the stars. Each one of us is a star in the heaven. In Vedic mythology, it's very clear that each one of us is a star. But a part of us comes down into this world to live out certain part of our dharmic uh, project, spiritual assignment, let's call it. And when we complete this, then we merge back with our star in the heaven. We become it. Jung has just also discussed this based on this Hindu mythology in his beautiful text, volume 16 on Rosarium Philosophorum, and so forth. At the end of our individuation, we return to our higher consciousness, what Nietzsche calls Übermensch, higher self. So the Daniel sitting here becomes Uber Daniel. You become the star that you are when you become the change, when you become aligned with your soul's code, with the your dharmic potential, and so forth. So I think you are the star. You are not imitating the star.
Oh, that's cool. I
But
I'm
you have to claim it. You see, you have to earn it.
Yes. You have to realize it.
You've forgotten who you are. You see, each one of us is born a divine child, and in course of our adaptation to this world, we have to lose the memory of who we are. So, because if we live out our full divine potential, we'll become schizophrenics. We will have too much knowledge. We will have too much uh, kind of collectivity, and that does not lead to living out an individual life. But at the end of days, we reclaim that divine child in us, the what Jung calls our number two personality or soul or higher personality. And in Bhagavad Purana, in one of the ancient uh, wisdom texts of India, which is a very fascinating study on its own right. When Krishna was a child, the story of childhood of Krishna, not Bhagavad Gita is about his adult self. Uh, he's a very naughty child, and he always steals butter and eats it, and then steals it from neighbor women and all the cowherds. And when he has enough, he gives it to all his friends, and when they are had enough, he gives it to monkeys. So he was really a thief, butter thief. So all the women complained, and they came to his mother Yashoda and said, "Well, we love your son, but this is a little too much. You need to take care of this." She said, "Okay, you're right." And she sat him down and said, "Look, I know what you're doing, and I know you're a little playful, but you're really not crossing the line. This is the red line. You can't do it." She said, "No, no, I didn't do it, Mom." He said, "Well, I know you did it." I said, "No, I didn't do it." He was adamant. He was very naughty. So he said, "Well, I'll have to check it. I want you to open your mouth and show me, your mouth." He said, "Well, trust me, you don't want to do that, Mom." He said, "No, no, I have. This is the day that I do it." He said, "Well, I'm warning you." She warned her 3 times, and she insisted. She said, "Okay." So he opened his mouth, and what she sees in his mouth is the whole universe. What she sees in his mouth is multiple universes. What she sees in her mouth is universe is being created and destroyed. What she sees in his mouth is herself castigating her son. And she immediately knew who this son was. He was the Lord himself. He was the divine Vishnu come as a son. And she started to tremble because she's, well, I've treated you like, naughty little boy all my life. You are the Lord. And Krishna was moved by his mother's angst. And his mother was also his devotee of Vishnu. And she said, you are my devotee, you're my mother. I can't make you feel this bad. So he gifted her amnesia for what she just saw so that he can reclaim his mother. He didn't want a devotee. He didn't want someone trembling at, surrendering to him. He wanted a mother because in this life he wanted a mother. That was the story. That was the deal. So each one of us is gifted amnesia for our divine origins, lest we get so uh, mesmerized by it, so overwhelmed by it that we cannot be human. So I think, the forgetfulness of our divine origins is the gift of the divine, so that we can live out our spiritual purpose in this life as human beings.
I was going to ask
Mhm.
if would it be heretical to say that his mother was also divine and had all of those universes and multiple galaxies and destruction and creation going on inside of her?
Well, absolutely. I think what he did was reminded her also, in some broad sense, that potentially, because she was projecting her own divinity onto him as well at the same time. But even if she became conscious of it, she'll become a mad woman. She can no more be just a mother, you see.
Hmm.
So he wanted to be just a little boy, and she wanted to be just a mother. That was the deal in this lifetime that they had. Both were the stars. If they both came together as stars, they would collide. They will destroy the universe. So they had to come back down in this life in their limited forms. And that is what happens when you are in a marriage. I remind my, couples when I see them sometimes together that, you are not in presence of your partner. You're in presence of the divine. You're two stars, two gods with each other. So live in your humanity, but do not forget who the other is. Then you can never treat them shabbily.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of think of it just on the spot,
Sure.
developmentally, like we're gifted with the amnesia, and maybe that's very important and proper for a certain amount of time. But as we grow older and wiser, we get in touch with, like how you said, you have to claim it and you have to recognize that you are the star. At
Well,
some point, you have
we
to.
we claim more and more of it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
In this lifetime, as human beings, we cannot claim all of it. We are not ready for it, but we claim what is essential to discharge our dharmic responsibilities or spiritual assignment for this particular life. And I think, but even within that limited scope, there is an expansion of consciousness. But we can only expand it if we are ready to execute the uh, the, uh, the relevant responsibility that comes with it. See, power and potential also has imperative of responsibility. And I think most people want to claim power, but not the spiritual responsibility that comes with it. If I'm a very good Jungian analyst, it does not because I'm some big shot. It means I must serve people at a deeper and higher level and mentor others and spread the word and so forth. So it's not meant for me or you to kind of claim those goods. You're a bank teller. You just channel the money through your agency. You don't take it home with you. See?
Yeah, good. One final question, perhaps. Of course, yes, Jung had this extensive collection of Eastern writings and books and scriptures,
Mhm.
but he was very much a Westerner. And so he had to try and come to an understanding with you, with your background and being Indian and Hindu and Jungian,
Sure.
what would you say that maybe Jungian missed, or that if he maybe had a better understanding of or incorporated more of, maybe would make his work more complete in your mind?
Well, it will not be more complete. It will be moving to a different threshold in certain ways. And I think uh, for where he was and when he was, he assimilated the Eastern wisdom with Western metapsychologies to the extent necessary uh, for his times. But I think, it was in his time. That was over 100 years ago. And we are in a different time. And our consciousness now is not moving at linear, but at quantum speed. Human consciousness is exponentially expanding with AI and such. We'll have to keep up with it. And at this point in history of human consciousness, we are ready for a much more robust, that is my view, of course, personally, a more robust integration with Eastern wisdom, authentic Eastern wisdom, not the, not the public, the karma cola, I call it, the kind of a dilute, commercialized Eastern wisdom of going to India for 2 weeks and coming back, enlightened and so forth. Not that kind of Eastern wisdom. I'm nothing wrong with that. I mean, do go to India for 2 weeks. I'm okay with that. But I think true integration takes study, takes living it, not just reading it or just attending a few lectures. I think we are ready for that. We need it, and I believe that people like me have that spiritual assignment to move the Jungian and the spiritual thought of the West to a slightly higher level of consciousness by integrating more of the core of Eastern meta psychologies and spiritual wisdom. And we have support from science, scientifically. My brother is a nuclear physicist, and he does a lot of work with nuclear fusion and so forth. And we have long discussions. I mean, that's the most stimulating part of my relationships with him. And we talk about these things. How the Western scientists now, their favorite reads are Gita and Upanishads and so forth, because they can relate to it. They use those theories in their work with nuclear physics and all kinds of stuff. We could talk for hours about it. You must talk to him. but uh, but I think a few people like me who are kind of stranded in the West right now sent here uh, to do that work, and I'm trying to do it. I'm one of the few Hindus in Jungian universe, and I try to do my best in my teaching, writings, etc., to integrate these ideas at a as relevant to our emerging consciousness. Yes.
Does it? Yeah, I've had talks with my wife is also a student in clinical psychology,
Very good.
and sometimes we take problem with. Have you heard of acceptance and commitment therapy?
I know, but tell me more. Yeah, sure.
There's some newer therapies like that, or even CBT and mindfulness, that they take this mindfulness or kind of meditative approach and they incorporate it into therapy,
Sure.
which I think is good,
It's
but
very good. Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
kind of like they take this whole underlying philosophy of what yoga or meditation is, and it's
Mhm.
like a ritual, it's a practice that arose out of this religious or philosophical worldview that most people don't hold here in the West.
Sure.
And let's say you're an atheist, or you don't believe in God or any higher power, and then you come into therapy and we're doing mindfulness with you. It's kind of like that surgical, let's take a scalpel and let's take this meditation and apply it over here, and just
Mhm.
completely remove it from its whole, the groundwork that brought it about. um I don't know what you think about it, but sometimes I can be a little bit like, that's a little silly, you know.
Well, I think it does do some good,
Yeah.
like Pope Francis and Pope Benedict. They were, I think, this movie I saw. It was wonderful. So they're talking about it, and Pope Francis, my favorite pope, by the way, and I'm so sad we lost him. Um, that he said, well, the outgoing pope said, the new pope, incoming pope, asked him, uh, "Can you smoke when you're praying?" So the old pope said, "Of course not. It's blessed. How can you smoke when you're praying?" Uh, no, no. Can you pray when you're smoking? He said, "No, no. When you're praying, you should not smoke. You're honoring God." He said, "Well, yeah, that's true." But then Pope Francis asked him, "But can you uh, pray when you're smoking?" Well, of course, you can pray anytime. There's no wrong time to pray. So I think there's no wrong to do meditative practice. It's not ideal, but I think it does do some good. But I think I always say, what you put in, you get out, right? So if you put in a deeper spiritual context to your yoga or mindfulness or meditative practice, of course, you'll get more out of it. But we now have enough research, neuroscience research, to prove that even a simple 45-minute meditation or mindfulness practice does marvelous epigenetic reboot for some people for 24 hours, for some 7 days, and for more, and does a telomere reboot. Your telomere count, which is the coverings of the tip of your chromosomes, which is the protective tip, the count of chromosomes increases by the telomeres increases by 33% just by one meditative or mindfulness hour. But it does not last for more than 7 weeks to 7 days. So just imagine, without any spiritual preparation, just a simple practice has a neuroscientific and a medically measurable positive impact on your body and your mind. So it does not hurt you, of course, to pray while you're smoking, but it'll be nice to, be a little more into prayer so that you don't have to kind of be smoking at the same time.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Ashok Bedi, thanks for joining me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And you mentioned a book earlier, and I should know more about this, but some of like you mentioned earlier, the chakras and how you apply that to archetypes. Do you have books on this?
Yes, yes. All my books have, my first book, Path to the Soul, laid out the whole idea of the body as a portal for the soul. And then I developed the ideas of Kundalini yoga in that. Then in my another second book, Retire Your Family Karma, I looked at the Kundalini turbulences in family constellations, how your grandfather's Kundalini problem become a grandson's problem, and that's your family karma and how to resolve it. So I've read a detailed discussion of that in my another book. After that, Crossing the Healing Zone from Illness to Wellness, I have laid out a very detailed framework of how to balance your Kundalini centers or chakras, so forth. So yes, I think uh, those are three of some of my other books, but those three specifically look at the whole issue of uh, how to work with your Kundalini system. So yeah,
Great.
of course,
Oh,
buy my book. They are very good.
yeah. Yeah. I'll buy them and I'll link them in the description so that anyone
Yeah.
who listens to this can find them easily.
And then incidentally, all the whatever little profit I make from my books, I put it in my charitable foundation to do work in India for developing spiritual and Eastern and Western and Jungian thought. So it supports my foundation to do volunteer work in India. And a lot of my Jungian colleagues are also volunteering their time. We are training Jungian analysts in India, and I've established two centers. Anyway, so that's where the money goes. Okay.
Actually, I was going to ask you at the beginning of this, we mentioned you just returned from India and Ireland as well, but you mentioned volunteer work in India. I
Right.
was going to ask, what is the work you were doing there?
Well, the IAAP, the International Association of Analytical or Jungian Psychology, and I'm their liaison person for developing Jungian training programs in India for the last 20 years. And I've established three centers, one in Bangalore, which is successful and it launched. In second is in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where Mahatma Gandhi had his ashram. It is very uh, rocking and rolling. We have done 20 students and a number of analysts who have graduated, and now they're spreading the beautiful integration work I'm talking about for patients and scholars and psychiatrists and psychotherapists in India. I'm also doing collaboration with Father Joe Pereira in Mumbai, Bombay, who's a protege of Mother Teresa and founder of Kripa. Mother Teresa and Father Joe founded Kripa Foundation, which treats people with addiction, HIV, and survivors, women and children survivors of sexual trafficking. And they have 70, 80 centers now, and I'm their primary consultant.
Oh, wow.
Father Joe and I wrote a book together, The Spiritual Paradox of Addiction. So that's that's my kind of ministry. That's my dharmic spiritual assignment, and I'm trying to be faithful to it. That's my little candle, okay,
Yeah.
in the darkness.
That's awesome. And I'm on internship. I'm working at a substance use disorder
Yes,
rehabilitation
mm,
residential program.
yes,
And I recently interviewed someone who wrote a book on addiction, alcoholism, and spirituality.
sure.
So I'll have to read yours, and I think it can be helpful as I'm
It
thinking
will,
through a lot of this.
it'll add a little more, emphasis on, some of my approach, which is
Hmm.
found very helpful. Father Joe and I, of course, use yoga as a very central technique in addiction treatment, very helpful. And of course, I've been a consultant to Dewey Center here in Milwaukee for last 40 years. Uh, uh, it is a very well-known addiction center here and so
Hmm.
forth. So, yeah, I think these approaches are extremely useful in addiction treatment, particularly. Yes.
Hmm. Well, great. Thank you. I look forward to reading that one.
Oh, thank you.
All of them.
Thank you very much.